And welcome back to Little Cuts, our weekly mini-sode where we dig into the things that we've been watching recently. I'm Terry. I'm
And
tired.
I and, and I am Mary Beth. And this week we're talking all things found footage because we were both just at the Unnamed Footage Festival in San Francisco. We hung out like for days on end. It was amazing.
It was so good.
It
Oh, it
was
was so
so
much
good.
fun. I
It
just I,
was the best
I was telling
time.
Mary Beth before we started recording that I wish we lived closer because this was lovely.
It
This
was
was a
so
lovely
lovely.
time.
And we got to hang out with Purpurina, which was awesome. And we
Yeah.
got to meet some fans of the show, which was like super cool and
That was
weird,
so
and gave out
weird.
stickers. So it was just like super, it was so fun. We're going to talk about some of the really awesome movies we saw on this episode because we saw so fucking many movies this weekend. Like, I think I saw like not new movies, I saw like 10 new movies. That doesn't include the screenings of films I'd already seen. So it was a weekend of cinema, that is for damn sure.
It absolutely was a weekend of cinema. And, here's the thing. I'm totally honest. I was not expecting a whole lot when I went in. I'm just going to be perfectly honest there. But I was blown away at the movies that came out of this little festival.
Fully converted. I love that you started this of you like not being a found footage person and now you are coming to found footage festivals with me. I mean, obviously I'm the draw. But it was so funny because Russell, one of the organizers, after you left, was like, "Did we get Terry? Did we get him?" And I'm like, "I think we did. We got him, Joe. I think we did."
You did. And here's the thing. It's not like I'm like active hater of found
Oh yeah,
footage. It's just I've seen so many that came when it was coming up through like the studio produced flicks that were just like cash
yeah,
grabs that I got sort of soured on the genre. And I this seeing the kind of creativity that went into the movies that we're going to talk about today really kind of like took me back to like the sort of do it yourself sort of attitude that I love about indie filmmaking. And this is on like such a micro level. I mean, one of the movies that we're going to talk about is literally a talking head. Like it's like
yeah,
almost an interview for the most of the runtime, and yet
yep.
it is enthralling as hell. And
Hmm.
I was really blown by a lot of the blown away. I was blown by the creativity. I was blown.
I mean, we were in San Francisco.
Yeah,
I was blown by the creativity.
all the creativity just one
Blew
after
me.
another just blew me. It's exhausted. No wonder I'm exhausted. Jesus. Ugh.
On that incredible note, let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff we saw that we can't dive. We're not going to dive too deep into. Just like a brief little
Yeah.
thing because there were a bunch of screenings of films that like we'd already seen, like Paranormal Activity, which was so cool to see on the big screen, and The
Hmm.
Tunnel, which is a 2011 Australian found footage film. If y'all haven't heard of it, um, it just got like the like Blu-ray treatment by Umbrella Entertainment, I
Oh,
believe.
did it?
I believe that's who did it. They got the Blu-ray treatment because this was a movie I'd only ever seen on YouTube. Um,
Hmm.
and so I watching it on the big screen and like an actual like good quality, so much fucking scarier. Incredible like monster. And yeah, so definitely was like one of the highlights of things that wasn't new but was able to experience for the first like almost it felt like it was for the first time. So that was just a really incredible viewing experience. And then we also got to see Robbie Banfich's new movie, Tinsman Road, a festival
Hmm.
cut. It is not even, it's going to be very different when it actually comes out. So we saw the 2 hour and 6 minute cut. Very different than the Outwaters. If you didn't like the
Oh.
Outwaters, you might like this better, I
Yeah, this
think.
one definitely had. I think you compared it to kind of like Lake
Lake
Mungo
Mungo.
vibes,
Hmm.
and I could absolutely see that. It's a quiet film. It's definitely a mystery, tinged with ghostly happenings. It's shot on what did he film it? What did he film it
On
on again? It
DV,
was like
mini DV.
DV, mini DV. And it had a very intimate feel to it, and it's so much different than the bombast of like the
Yeah.
last half of the Outwaters. But it's going to be really hard for us. We definitely want to talk about it when it gets edited a little bit and gets taken down a little bit longer, a little bit a more edited version and concise version of it, because there's a lot there, but the bones of it are really good, and I'm really excited for people to see this one.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I think it's Robbie showing everyone like how much more dialogue and a lot more like you said, mystery and like kind of meditations on grief. Also, so yeah. So keep an eye out for when that comes out. But it was cool to get to see this cut of the film and have its like world premiere at the festival. It was super cool. But yeah, we won't talk too much about it because I know that it's gonna be very different the next time we see it. But
yeah,
it was
absolutely. So another old movie, but that like very small amount of people have ever seen is Tontine, which was at one point called the Tontine Massacre, which is as if like Survivor were to happen, but instead of getting to the island where they were going to film, the poor cast gets shipwrecked on an unknown island, and all of the kind of strengths that they were hiring for, in order to make good television, to have competing personalities and to have all of that kind of differing like things that butting head type stuff, turns on itself when all of a sudden the cameras aren't there and all these personalities are really toxic. And so we sort of see this devolve into a Lord of the Flies-esque situation among the living castmates. And I was really surprised by this one.
yeah, and it's funny because the cameras are off, but a lone box of a lone box washes up on shore, and they're like, "Oh my god, it's supplies!" and it's cameras. So all they have are cameras, and they're recording themselves, and it's kind of framed as like we're seeing footage of like the after effects of this from like a lawyer, plus footage of the director trying to get to these people, plus also getting kind of like a lot of the beginning too was like the interviews and stuff of like getting them cast, because I think what this movie really hits is like like you said, like casting personalities who would make good TV, but what happens when there's no one there to regulate those personalities and when they're allowed to kind of go wild. And what's also really, really interesting about Tontine is it was like a lost movie. This is the first time it's been screened. Like, there are very few people that have ever seen this movie, and we're some of the lucky few people who were able to see it. And for that, I know we were like, is this going to be a good movie? Is it just like the novelty behind it? Exactly. And it was actually a really well-made found footage movie. Really, pretty violent so well. Too. Yeah, it played so well. It's pretty violent. But also, the really incredible story behind it is the fact that this had like a huge press tour. A former winner of Survivor, I believe, was doing actual interviews. Awesome, it was like doing interviews about like promoting Tontine. People were actually auditioning. Like they'd already cast the movie, but they were holding auditions and like real people were showing up. And the thing about Tontine was like really wild was that the whole premise was not just Survivor, but you signed over all of your assets. So the whole premise is ridiculous, but real people were still doing it, like signing over, like ready to sign over all of their money, their house, everything, like risking it all for this game show. And so, like, obviously it's not real, but there was a lot of really interesting stuff, like marketing around it, and then it vanished. And then now it has resurfaced at the Footage Festival, and hopefully someone else picks it up because, like, it is a really good kind of look at that, like, influencer culture. Not influencer culture, but rather, like, reality TV culture and that time period specifically.
I'm telling you, Shudder or Screenbox or someone, this would kill. This movie would kill. It had the audience laughing, cheering, gasping. There is a moment of pure surprise towards the end that had the entire theater literally almost on their feet clapping at this moment. And I'm like, you're watching this, and I'm like, why was this never released? Because this movie isn't one of those that's like, the story is more interesting than the movie, or it's like it's a kind of a curious item of it, or like a curiosity of that time period. It is actually incredibly well made. I believe they said that like Weta did the the special effects. Isn't that right? Or
I
Peter Jackson's
believe
studio, I think is what they said.
so. I
Like,
believe so. It was
it
super
looks so
weird. It
good.
was like the timing of everything was just like so poor. But I'm hoping that now that we've seen it and that like people are going to start talking about it a little bit more, like the theater was pretty full. And there are people like in Survivor hats, like I saw there, that were like there
Mm.
because of the Survivor connection, which
Yes,
was
there were.
super interesting. Like I was like, oh, this is wild to see like these confluence of like fan groups coming out. But like it was pretty packed for
It was pretty packed, and there was a
yeah.
row of people right in front of us that were Survivor fans. They came in for this movie, and they sat down, and they were laughing at sort of like the kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily in jokes, but some of the things that the movie does that are, you know, key things that people that watch Survivor are used to seeing. Just
Yeah.
sort of like there's like there was, it played well for both people, fans of Survivor, and
Yeah.
also horror movie fans, because it just. I could gush about this movie forever. It was so
It was
good.
it was so good. So I'm really really hoping that someone picks it up because this needs to see the light of day. I think it would. The story itself, like around it, is so cool, but the movie itself is really good too. So again, it's not
Hmm.
just like a novelty thing. Like this could be a really cool Vinegar Syndrome release, I bet, with like a really
Yeah,
awesome like commentary track and like behind the scenes. Like anyway, but Tontine,
so good.
chef's kiss. One of my most anticipated of the fest because of just like the whole story, and it did not disappoint whatsoever. Exceeded
No.
expectations,
Yes, for me
100%.
too. Me too.
So another one that we saw that exceeded my expectations, very different than Tontine, is
Hmm.
Safe Word.
Yes.
And this is a film by Koji Shirashi, who did Noroi, A Cult. We all know I love him. I have a tattoo of one of his movies on me. Like, so he is a premier Japanese found footage filmmaker. But Safe Word is actually not a horror film. This is a pseudo documentary about a idol and pro wrestler, Mina the Killer, who ends up
Misa,
training
right?
Misa the Killer.
Misa.
Pardon me, Misa the Killer. Ends up training to be a dominatrix at a sex club, and someone is making a documentary about her and following her journey as she trains to become a dominatrix and learns about how to embrace her sexuality and her kinky side. And it's a pink film, which is like a Japanese softcore porn series. It's like a softcore porn series that's been going on for decades, and so this is the latest entry. And I was like, okay, softcore porn, late night showing, very interesting. And it ended up being actually incredibly sweet and empowering. It's very queer, it's kinky as hell, and the whole like thesis of the movie is like embracing your kink and your pervert side and like not finding shame in that. And I love that because I feel so often, kink is so often like talked about as like a shameful thing in a lot of
Hmm.
movies when it's not at all. And this was very much like celebrating kink and not just like, oh, he hit me, but like golden showers multiple times.
The most wholesome movie involving golden showers I've
Yeah,
ever seen.
yeah, a lot of like, yeah, two scenes of someone drinking pee. But also it was like really sweet. And it's really weird. Not weird, but it was like such an interesting tone and it was so good. And it's just like queer women and kinky women and women finding like out their like how to be powerful and like finding the source of their confidence and their power, and then also women falling in love with each other. And it was really really good.
Exploring BDSM and master servant type kind of relationships, but in
Yeah.
a very kink positive light that just, it's wholesome. It was such a wholesome story, and I was really surprised because again I was like, what am I getting into with this pink type of film, because I've
Yeah.
never seen one before.
Yeah,
I'm
neither
like,
did I.
okay, is this gonna feel awkward watching this in a big theater with softcore porn? And it was a little bit in parts, but it was really good. And like I said, the most wholesome movie ever with golden showers. Put that on the poster, like please, like just, I loved it. I was I was
I
I was surprised.
I was too. I really enjoyed it, and I really Koji Shirashi. It's always interesting watching a movie like this directed by a man and
Mm,
it had being about
yes.
women because there's always that concern that it's going to be incredibly sexualized. It's going to be like, look at these titties and like look at these women having sex with each other. But even though there was like a decent amount of nudity, there wasn't any kind of like weird fetishization. Like, I mean,
No.
there's fetishes in the movie, but it's not
Yeah.
fetishizing. Like the camera operator is a woman, which I know is not the same thing as the director, but there's that interesting gaze going on with her playing with her gaze. But also, like, it is a very respectful film in terms of like bodies and sex. It isn't trying to be
It's not exploitive.
It's not exploitive. Like the subject matter is already like so titillating. It's not trying to like force it. It's trying to make a more empowering kind of sex positive statement in a way. Because I think like I'm not an expert on this, but sexuality in Japan is very different. It's very kind of repressive. It's very, I think sexuality is kind of like it's weird in Japan, and this is just a very much kind of like embrace sexuality. Like, why are we not embracing it? So it was awesome. It was so good. It was so sweet. I probably wouldn't have seeked this out on my own.
No,
now I
wouldn't have either.
I want to find more Pink films to watch. I'm very curious about that series. So another like just cool thing that you wouldn't usually see at a film festival or anywhere, and like this festival off like Tontine and Safe Word, like these two of like the cool things we got to see that many people wouldn't have the opportunity to see otherwise. It's just so fucking cool.
It really is. What a great way to end a Saturday night.
Seriously, you're like wow, Viva Perverts. That's like the tagline basically, yes. Viva Perverts. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, fucking Viva Perverts. My Letterboxd review is just I love women and exclamation points. So yeah.
Love it.
There's no way to transition to another movie from that. Like there's just like nothing to really. There's no really there.
Speaking of dominatrix, Chad gets the axe. How's that? That's not even a bad segue.
That's not even a connection. But no, okay, yeah, fine.
But hashtag Chad gets the axe. Another movie that surprised the absolute shit out of me because, okay, so the festival started, well, for us, it started with a movie that was also sort of like social influencers getting a bit more than they bite off, and that one did not work for me.
Yeah.
And then we'd also gotten Deadstream last year, which I absolutely loved. We had the directors on the show. I thought it was great, funny, spooky, scary, great time. And so I was like, do I need to see another one? And turns out, yes, I do. Because hashtag Chad gets the axe is like Deadstream with more people and also a bit more, a different kind of humor, maybe, I guess.
Yeah, I think whereas Deadstream, and like there's been a lot of like really valid complaints about like kind of racist jokes and playing a lot with like the racist live streamer and them not really getting it. This one stays away from that a lot more. And I think the humor in this one, I think, really plays off of, I mean, what they talked about in the intro is like Logan Paul-esque like prank style videos. And so they're playing with that format, but I also think another thing they do really well is capturing social media couple dynamics. Yes. Because there's a couple, because we have Chad, we have Spenifer, yes, Burrito Spenifer, which is Spencer and Jennifer, and then we have Spicy Steve. And it's a group of influencers who are going. Spicy Steve is basically taking them to a haunted location and wants to prank Chad and get him for pranking him in return. And it all goes wrong. But Spenifer, I loved these two characters because it captures like the TikTok / Instagram influencer couple dynamics well.
There was this. Back, like, I'm sure, I don't even remember what they were called, but back, like, when Jenna Marbles was more of a thing, and that whole, like, crop
yeah.
There was, like, a couple that would always film together, and they these couple were channeling that YouTube, and I wish I remember what their name was, but it's, like, a really handsome, a little androgynous guy, and his girlfriend who does makeup videos, and they were, like, together, and they'd film stuff together, and it reminded me of that kind of dynamic that used to be really popular on YouTube. I don't know if it
Yes.
still is anymore, but back in like maybe 6 or 7 years ago,
Yeah.
or a little bit more, there was like a particular couple that I cannot remember what their name
Yeah.
was, but they also had like a combined name, or were known as like a combined name as well. And so that was giving me that. And then you
Yes.
have like Spicy Steve that was like trying to be the new Paul Logan. Is that his name? Logan Paul. Paul
Logan
Logan.
Paul. Logan
Logan
Paul.
Paul. People with two
Yeah.
first names.
I know.
Why? And so it definitely plays into that inside Devil's Manor, former home of a satanic cult. Stuff goes haywire. I think it's edited incredibly well
Yeah. It
between all the perspectives.
it really does capture that really well because it creates its own little like platform that looks kind of like Instagram and TikTok,
Hmm.
and it creates. I love it when movies can like create a platform like that and actually like kind of give you the inner workings of it a little bit. I love how they do that, and it's very simple, but you kind of get the point.
Hmm.
And I love the way. So what one of the best parts of this movie is the how they utilize the chat, because
Yes. Oh my
all of this
God.
is told via live stream, and so the chat was delivering some of the fucking funniest lines, and
Mm.
it again it emulates in an obviously satirical way of how these live chats go, like people
Full
saying
of
like
trolls.
it's full of trolls, send me pictures of feet, I love feet, like all of this, like, and it's just the commentary is so funny, and I feel like in some movies you can kind of lose reading the text, but I think what Chad Gets the Axe does so well is making sure, like, prioritizing that chat and making it big enough that you can see it and read it, and balancing what is happening, like, to the characters versus the chat really well. I think that's such a hard balance to strike.
It is
But here, they make it seem so easy because you're not too
effortless.
distracted by either thing. And they
No.
let the jokes hit and then they move on. And it's just so funny and how they balance that in these moments of terror. And it's just like, look, I really like Deadstream. I think I like this better than Deadstream.
I
And
do
I'm
too.
not trying to like hate on Deadstream whatsoever.
No, it's not
I
aiming,
think that
putting people
this,
against each other,
yeah,
but
I just think that this one has such an incredible approach to like the influencer horror in
mhm.
such a funny way that is repulsive but never kind of throws itself into like, let's say, ridiculously offensive thing. Like obviously they say horrible things, but they don't throw them into the whole like, let's say, really offensive things all the time on camera and be like, look at how stupid and rude influencers are. I think it takes them a little bit more seriously in a way that I
It does.
respect, because yeah, there's like more nuance to it.
So like thinking about it, what I appreciate about Deadstream is that it doesn't try to um what's the word I'm looking for? Not rescue, but it doesn't try to like make you feel for the character, because he is
Yeah,
a piece of
the
shit.
shit. Yeah.
Whereas this movie asks, okay, what if these people that we see as these larger than life kind of assholey people, but by the end of the movie you actually kind of feel for them? Because like I had a
Yeah.
lot more empathy towards these characters than I did the main character of Deadstream. The name is
Yeah,
I've
because
lost its
they
name.
don't make them as terrible. They're annoying,
Hmm.
but they're not as like bad people. They're just really like grating on you. And especially with the Spicy Steve character, I liked him a lot as like the guy who's trying really hard to be like to keep up and is just like doing his best. And it's he's caught up in the influencer machine, and I don't, it was just so smart. I really enjoyed it.
What a cutie patootie too, Spicy
I
Steve.
know. I need to start calling Steve Spicy Steve.
Yes.
But like I don't know who's picked that one up yet, but someone needs to, because like it that
Oh,
one's
it
gonna
has to
that one
be.
was like the big crowd pleaser I think of the festival.
Hmm. It was my favorite, honestly. Like
Yeah.
just in term. I say that, but then I also really like Tontine. But I think in terms of like crowd pleasing, just I was there for the ride the entire time. It was probably my favorite of the fest.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites for sure. But
Yeah.
another one that I really loved was it's very, again, like we're swinging all over the place because all of these movies are so different. But I really love this movie called The Gulf of Silence,
Hmm.
which is a pseudo documentary one of the few films in the festival directed by a woman, which was amazing. But this documentary follows a woman, Dr. Laura Gale, who recounts her own experience with a UFO and her kind of like what happens to her after she goes public with that information, and then how she gets involved with a government organization about extraterrestrial life, focused on extraterrestrial life. And it's very much a talking head documentary. I think it's very much a movie that some people are going to love and some people are going to not like. It's definitely just like one of those. But I loved it. It's a lot of it is the actor who plays Laura Gale speaking directly to camera, telling her story. And then there's like B-roll sliced in of like actual footage of declassified UFO sightings and things like that. But a lot of it is just her telling her story directly to camera. And it's a really compelling story. I think, again, like, this could be a movie that people are like, this is boring. But I think the writing is really smart, and that it's not just about aliens, but it's about this woman trying to, like, find acceptance and, like, a place in the world after having a very isolating experience. And I think the story behind it is also fascinating because M.K. Rhodes, who directed this, put it up. Like, she made it.
This is like Tontine, where the story behind it is equally interesting as the movie is.
So, 'cause the story of this is why I wanted to see it, and I was really glad that the movie lived up to it, because M.K. Rhodes made this during the pandemic, and she just, like, put it up on the internet because she was like, fuck it. Well, people who love, like, UFO conspiracy theorists are a lot, and they found it, and they thought it was a real documentary, and kind of went nuts on her. They doxed her. They were harassing her, saying, like, you know the truth. And she was like, I literally wrote that, like, I wrote this. Like, this is not a real thing. I based a lot of it on, like, extensive research, but, like, this isn't real. And they didn't believe her. They're like, you're lying. You're covering things up for the government. And she ended up taking it offline, and you can't find it really anywhere.
She took it off YouTube.
She took it off YouTube. And so she won't share it anywhere outside of a film festival setting, because that way the narrative is a little bit more controlled. But it was she
was saying, there was a question and answering, and she was kind of saying that, like, she made this to be seen by film lovers, and she was not expecting it to be grasped by alien conspiracy theorists. And that's why she was like, that's why it's only going to play at film festivals now, because it just got to the point where it was, like, too much for her.
And she was emulating the style of, like, an old documentary called The Portrait of Jason. That's just a guy talking to camera for, like, an hour and a half. So she's modeling that style of documentary filmmaking, while also utilizing aspects that the director of Tetsuo the Iron Man did in terms of editing. So there's a lot of really interesting, like, cinematic things happening here, but it got latched onto by conspiracy theorists. But, like, it is it's a hypnotic movie. It's quiet, like, pardon the Gulf of Silence pun. But I think that this, again, the writing and the story is just so fascinating. I think it's a really fascinating way to tell a story. And, like, this could have been an audio drama. I was thinking about this as we were watching. I was like, because there's a lot of stuff coming out now that's playing with sound in a really fascinating way. And it's always like, do you need to have a movie attached to this kind of thing? But what I loved about this is, like, she's looking into the camera. So you have to look her in the eye, and you really have to, like, confront her emotionally. And I think that is a really important part of this movie, is that, like, you feel like you are really connecting with her and her story because she's looking at you. It is not, like, looking off to the side. It is, like, face to camera, telling you the story, and you feel like she is confessing stuff to you personally. And I think that to me was a huge part of my connecting to it, and, like, getting invested in her own story and, like, her own journey through all of the weird stuff that she's experienced and seen.
Yeah, as I was watching it, I kept having to remind myself that this isn't a documentary.
Yeah.
Because it feels real to the point that I can understand. I don't think that what they did is right, but I can understand how someone that is deep in the conspiracy of aliens would latch onto this, because it feels like it, it feels like a scientific documentary. It
Yeah.
feels like this woman has worked for this secret government organization and knows her shit, and it it feels real to the point that I was like sitting here going, I don't know if this was a good idea to just release on the internet.
Yeah.
Like it because it was so believable that by the end of it I was like, there is enough truth in here and enough little bits of nuggets to tell the story that it's hard it'd be easy to look at this and say that this is a real thing, that this is a real
Yep.
woman who is unveiling all of these secrets that she had signed an NDA about at one point. It feels real,
It
and I
does.
think that's really fascinating. And I think that it shows kind of the dangerousness of just releasing some things onto the internet without really kind of thinking about what could happen as a result of that. Because I did wonder, I was like, ooh, I don't know if this is something you just want to put out there.
Yeah, and again, like if you don't know those communities or have any familiarity with them, like you don't have any idea. But like, and a lot, and so many people now are doing those kinds of things and releasing their found footage online
Hmm.
because, like, it's found footage is so inherently like punk in its
Yeah,
sensibilities in terms of like you make something, you just put it up, and like you let it happen. You're not really always beholden to studios and things like that. Which and that makes me a little bit sad that this probably won't be seen by a ton of people, but I do
same.
think it's like incredibly well made for what it like, especially for what it is, and I think it's really compelling. And again, people are going to have complaints about some of the editing stuff and be like, "This is boring," but I don't agree with that.
I think it benefits also being seen in a movie theater where you don't have
Yeah,
distractions. Because I'll
yeah,
be honest, if I had my phone, I might have been checked out at some points.
yeah,
But because we are sitting there in a theater and we don't have any kind of distractions sitting around us, it really helped to pull at least me into the
yeah,
story that is happening.
yeah.
And Purpurina is in our chat, and she says that she really wished she could have seen that one, and also that she loves this festival proves that found footage is not a one note like some people say about the subgenre, and I will agree with that 100%.
Like there's just
This festival
so
proved it.
many ways to do it, and it's incredible. And I know there's a couple more we're still talking about that are even more different than what we've like already talked about. But again, like just listening to this, like different subject matters, like so many different things are spanned in found footage, and I just think it's such an incredibly cool way of storytelling that obviously has its challenges, but I think if it's done right, like we saw so many things that did it right, it really can create something awesome. And I think Gulf of Silence is a testament to how found footage really does fuck with the concept of truth and how
Yeah.
malleable truth is, and how you can emulate what you think truth is so well, like so scarily well. It's scary. That meta
Yeah.
kind of thought is really scary about how well you can trick people with a found footage movie if it's done the right way.
And I'm just listen. Think about the movies we just talked about. We talked about a pink film. We've talked about an influencer horror. We've talked about reality TV. We've talked
Mm-hmm.
about a talking head pseudo documentary. Like these are just some of the things that we saw there, and it
Yeah.
it made me happy that this is the kind of ingenuity people are bringing to found footage. Because I've never been necessarily a huge fan of it, but I think that's because I came up after like Blair Witch and Paranormal Activity, seeing
Yeah.
all the studio released movies that were being released to theater, not knowing that there was like this sort of punk avant-garde underground that was also brewing, because that's not what I had seen. I had just seen like
Yeah.
the theater releases. And so to see the kind of creativity on display here, it just made
It's
me a
neat.
fan.
It's just so cool. And it is so avant-garde, and it's like cool to sit there and be like, damn, this is like it's experimental in a way that it's not inaccessible. Some stuff is, but like I also love that you experience so many different kinds of things. Like I think obviously film festivals is a variety, but here just the style of storytelling is so radically
Hmm.
different from movie to movie. It's really exciting because it feels like every movie is so different.
Yeah.
Like even if the story sounds familiar, it's told in such a different way. And so that just makes it so fun. And like, how are they going to tackle found footage? Because like, no one film tackled found footage the same way as another,
No.
which was awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
let's talk about the short film that we fucking love.
Oh my
That's told almost
God.
entirely through an Adobe Premiere project. Hold on, let me pull up the full title.
Oh, I have it right
Oh, you
here.
do? Okay, perfect. What is the full title of
Digital,
this fucking short movie?
maybe the longest title I've seen in a long time. Digital video editing with Adobe Premiere Pro: the real world guide to setup and workflow, which takes place, I think, almost entirely
Yep, almost entirely
in
via Adobe Premiere Pro.
Adobe Premiere Pro, and it is an editor sitting with, I think, the director of the film, where the directors film something and they have captured a ghost, and the ghost keeps popping up in the film, and the director wants the editor to kind of cut out the parts with the ghost and make the story still cohesive, and the director doesn't want to kill his darlings, so to speak, with some shots that he absolutely loves that this ghost is ruining. And so it's a 40-minute short film about the fight between the director and the editor, but also this ghostly presence captured on film that is funny, terrifying. We both jumped in each other's arms at one point because
Yep,
there's this moment where
yep.
I don't know if they still do it, but like I would say about 15 years ago, there was like this YouTube clip. It almost looked like a car commercial, and it was like it had this like very sappy kind of very serene music playing, and in the distance you would see this car kind of coming around this whole curve, and it just was slowly playing. By the time the car passes out of camera, and you're expecting the car to come into camera again, and this zombie pops up and screams, there's a loud scream at you, and that's kind of one of the jump scares in this that had Mary Beth and I almost jumping into each other's arms.
It was beautiful. Terry got to get beer spilled on me but
I did.
I spilled beer on Terry at one point. I don't know. Like it was just it was a good time. Anywho.
It was so good though.
It was so good, and like the way the story, it's just so smart, like telling it, and it's like there's dialogue over it and there's stuff it's like so, and I was like, I wonder, because like I had heard about this and I was like, I'm so curious at how they're gonna do this, and like as a video editor I was so excited to see how they were gonna do it.
You were laughing so much. I loved it.
I was dying. I was like, as she was like, you didn't get this much coverage. I just was laughing, like the small little jokes about like editing. It was just like cracking me up, and working with somebody who like will not again kill their darlings, and it's just so clever. It's just so clever. I love it. And then the last one that I'll talk about, you unfortunately didn't see, Terry.
I wasn't able to see. I was flying home.
Invoking Yell, which is a Chilean found footage film, which is about an all-female black metal band in the 90s called Invoking Yell. Invoking Yell is how they said it, which is incredible. But it's about their specifically depressive, suicidal black metal, and they want to make sounds of suffering. So they go to this haunted location to record EVPs to play in the background of their song where they're screaming. And it's basically like a behind the scenes of them making the video and getting the EVPs. And it's set in the 90s, so it's filmed on like a camera, I don't know, camcorder, I think. I'm not quite sure.
Probably.
But it's just these three women who want to be like black metal, like unforgettable black metal stars, and what they're willing to do. And like,
you said it was queer, right?
It's there's a scene where all three of them start making out. It's pretty awesome.
Hell yeah.
But there are parts of it that kind of drag a little bit, but ultimately it's just like feminine. It's directed by a guy, but like again, we don't see a lot of found footage films that are all about women, and all about women like that aren't based around men. You know what I mean? Like this is all about them wanting to be like an incredible black metal band. And it's just like a topic you don't see at all. Like all of it together. And I think something about the way that the characters are all just trying to figure out their place in the world and make a name for themselves. And also just the way it's filmed, it feels very, again, punk.
Yeah.
Again, they're black metal, but it's punk. And the ending is like incredibly violent and harrowing for some of the stuff that they do at the end. So I'm really impressed by it. I am excited for everyone to hopefully see it someday, because once again, we need more international found footage that is from different perspectives that we don't usually see. And this has all of that, and it's just got some really creepy parts, and the way, again, it plays with sound is really interesting. So that was its world premiere at the festival, and I really dug it.
I'm excited to watch it. I have the screener, and I'm
Yeah,
excited to watch it either sometime later this week probably. But
yeah,
I'm really pumped after you told me about it.
yeah. I really, really dug it. So there were so many good movies. We saw so many movies, met so many cool people. We hung out with Robbie, Van Fitch some more. We met Dutch Marich, who did Horror in the High
I
Deserts
didn't
1
get to
and
meet
2.
him.
Oh, no, it's right. And then I know that some people that listen to the podcast were there. So, hi, guys. It was so nice to meet you.
Out of body experience.
I
Like, I
know.
realize I look at the numbers. I know people listen to our podcast, but it's like one thing to like have this spreadsheet of numbers, and then another
Yeah.
to actually realize that those numbers are attached to a human body.
Yeah. And like, hear people talking about our podcast when we're not talking about, like, we
And they didn't know
overheard
we were there.
a listener, hello, speaking about our podcast, and we did like, and I was like, hey, thanks for listening. Here's a sticker. It was just like so cool and weird and cool, and
Yeah,
it just like feels good to know that people listen to our podcast and talk about it. It was pretty
yeah.
neat,
So
pretty
surreal.
validating, weirdly
Yeah.
too, like wild. But I mean, just y'all, this is one of the like I think one of like the best fests out there. I don't think a lot of people know about it, so we're gonna keep talking about it. But the organizers, Madeline, Russ, and Oksana, are just incredible people. They know how to have a good time, and they love found footage. And so yeah, it
Listen,
was
I want to go
incredible.
back next year. So,
Yeah, you do. And I dragged your ass to Amoeba and got you to buy so many
oh my God,
bouquets.
I bought so many movies
I
and
know.
I
So did
bought
I.
so many
When I was
books.
packing, I was like, this is a problem. Because of course, like I also bought like I don't have a fucking VCR, but I bought these crazy ass VHS tapes because we found Amityville 1992 About Time on VHS, and like when are we ever gonna see that on VHS ever again? Like it was wild. So yeah. So it was just such a good time. So we'll be back next year. And me and Tara got to hang out in person for multiple days in a row, and that was just
Oh,
a goddamn delight. So
it was so wonderful. It was so wonderful.
it was so wonderful. I drank a lot of coffee and a lot of energy drinks and a lot of my favorite in the morning going, good mornings. And then we just, oh my God. And Purpurina brought up the incredible chicken nuggets, Japanese fried chicken we got that we all were eating in silence and just being like, these are the best chicken nuggets I've ever eaten in my entire life. And they were, in fact, the best chicken nuggets.
They were so good.
It
They
was
were
a
so good.
bucket of chicken nuggets and a
A
bucket of
bucket. I
garlic
posted
french
a
fries.
picture on Twitter,
Yes. Oh my
and
God.
they were.
Purple Cow in San Francisco, next to Balboa Theater. Anyone in San Francisco wants to go. It's a tiny hole in the wall with bubble tea and fried chicken, and that shit was clutch. I was hyping it up. I was
Line
so
out the
worried.
door.
I was like, I hope this is as good
You
as
were.
I was like, I hope that I am not overhyping this chicken from last year, but I wasn't. Made me feel good. I'm always worried when I'm like, oh shit, they're gonna think it's like just fucking
We
fried
had good
chicken.
food.
We ate so good. We
We
ate
had good food.
so good.
Mm, mm.
Wow. Well, that was our recap of Unnamed Footage Festival.
Yeah.
No.
And so we haven't started a new series yet.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
Listeners, do you have any suggestions for? Because we just finished Chucky, and then we had Robbie on, and then we did this. So, do you have any suggestions for things that we should talk about on Little Cuts? Is like a movie that Mary Beth and I can both watch? Because
Oh my god. Oh
oh
my
my
god.
god,
Oh my god.
it's
Oh my
happening.
god, it's happening. Purpurina in the chat just typed one letter R with three
R
ellipses,
dot
and
dot
I know
dot.
exactly what that is leading to. And Terry still needs to fucking
Riverdale?
look.
We talking about Riverdale?
Riverdale! The show that got me through grad school. If you guys can't tell, I latch on to terrible television when I'm incredibly stressed out and don't want to focus on anything. And you know what? I love that for me.
Uh, but
But
okay, so yeah, so we're just gonna have a regular episode next week.
yeah.
But oh my god, Oh my God, Mary Beth, who are we talking to on Monday?
So on Monday, perhaps one of the best conversations we've ever had. We are talking with Michelle Garza Cervera, who is the co-writer and director of Huesera the Bone Woman, one of the best movies of the year, if not the best movie of the year, if I am so bold to say, in March,
I'll be
almost
right
April.
there with you, to be bold. It's gonna be hard to dethrone it.
I know. And she brought with her David Lynch's The Elephant Man. Like, the coolest woman of all time is like, yeah, I saw The Elephant Man at the age 8, and we just talked about that, and that is an incredible conversation. I know we always say they're incredible conversations, because they always are, but, like, Michelle is just so cool and inspirational and badass.
Amazing.
And speaking of punk, she's incredibly punk. So please listen to that episode on Monday. I promise you, you will love it, because
it's a great time.
And if you haven't seen Huesera the Bone Woman, it is out now on VOD and digital. So please watch it ahead of time. I mean, you don't have to, but I want you to, because you should watch it, because it's so fucking good. So, yeah. And also, we Patreon stuff is coming up soon. Seltzer for Life is coming up next week. And then the week after that, we will have our new Fresh Wounds. We won't tell you what it is quite yet, though. We're going to keep it a secret still. Keep the intrigue. A little hush hush. But, so keep an eye on Twitter and Patreon. And if you are not a patron, why not? Like, come on. Please?
Throw a coin to your Witcher.
Yeah, toss a coin to your poor podcaster. Because there's going to be really cool shit on our Patreon. But listeners, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. Are you excited about any of these found footage movies? Most of them you haven't seen, but like, which ones are you most excited for? You can let us know on Twitter or via email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And don't forget to review, rate, subscribe, and as Mary Beth said, support us through Patreon, because you're getting content. You'd be able to see our beautiful faces.
Content.
And great stuff.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.